The Trail of Tears is one of the darkest and most heart-wrenching chapters in American history. It tells the story of Native American tribes forced from their ancestral lands, enduring unimaginable hardships as they marched toward an uncertain future. But what was daily life really like for those on this harrowing journey? From the unforgiving elements and rampant disease to the crushing emotional toll of displacement, the Trail of Tears was a brutal reality that reshaped the Old West and the lives of thousands. In this video, we'll uncover the gritty, often overlooked truths behind the Trail of Tears, shedding light on the human stories that history books often leave out.
There was very little food and water. The journey along the Trail of Tears was marked by an acute lack of basic necessities. Critical resources, such as food, clean water, clothing, and adequate shelter, were often unavailable. Even medicines, which might have alleviated suffering, were scarce. Coffins, a grim but necessary provision for so many, were also in short supply. These shortages created a dire situation, leaving those traveling the trail with few options for survival. Efforts to supplement food rations through hunting yielded little success. Game animals were scarce along the route, largely due to the high number of travelers and the depletion of wildlife in the region. This lack of nourishment led to widespread malnutrition, weakening people's ability to endure the physical and emotional challenges of the journey. Adding to these struggles was a severe drought that occurred in 1838. Rivers and creeks, which the travelers depended on for drinking water, were reduced to mere trickles or dried up entirely. This forced the first group of Cherokee, who began their journey in August 1838, to retreat to a base camp near present-day Chattanooga, Tennessee. The absence of reliable water sources made sustaining life extraordinarily difficult. The combination of hunger and dehydration took a heavy toll, but the suffering was not merely physical. The emotional weight of such conditions, compounded by the forced removal from their ancestral lands, created a profound sense of despair among those on the trail. The teamsters who drove the wagons were cruel. Private John Burnett recalled one particularly striking incident during his time on the Trail of Tears. He described witnessing a heartbreaking moment involving an elderly man, nearly blind, struggling to keep pace. A teamster attempted to force the man forward by striking him repeatedly. For Burnett, the sight of the frail figure trembling under such treatment was unbearable. Unable to stand by, Burnett intervened, confronting the teamster to protect the elderly traveler. In the scuffle that followed, Burnett sustained an injury to his face. This moment not only highlighted his compassion, but also underscored the tense and challenging conditions faced by those on the trail. His actions reflect the moral dilemmas and emotional burdens that accompanied many participants, soldiers and civilians alike, during this tragic chapter in history. Burnett's account is not an isolated one. Similar tensions arose frequently as those forced to march encountered various forms of mistreatment. Teamsters, often employed to manage the logistical aspects of the journey, were sometimes harsh in their methods, prioritizing efficiency over humanity. Meanwhile, local militias posed additional challenges. In some areas, these groups either antagonized the travelers or attempted to impose their own authority, adding to an already overwhelming ordeal. These accounts illustrate the deeply layered struggles experienced during the Trail of Tears. Beyond the physical hardships of hunger and exhaustion, there were moments of moral and interpersonal conflict. Such stories reveal not only the resilience of those who endured, but also the ways in which human decency was tested in one of the darkest periods of American history. Cherokees were charged tolls. On a walk they were forced to take. Throughout the Trail of Tears, Native Americans often had to take long detours away from the main routes to avoid towns and cities where residents opposed their presence. Communities along the way frequently expressed hostility, forcing the groups to traverse unfamiliar and often more challenging terrain to bypass these settlements. Additionally, private landowners sometimes exploited the situation by charging fees for passage through their property. These charges could be substantial, placing further strain on the already limited resources of those on the journey. One notable example occurred as the Cherokee traveled through Tennessee and Kentucky on their way to southern Illinois. When they reached the Ohio River, they faced another hurdle, crossing the river by ferry. The ferry operators charged the Cherokee $1 per person, a considerable amount for the time. Adjusted for modern currency, this is roughly $22.26 per individual. Comparatively, regular ferry users at the time paid only 12 cents, equivalent to about $2.67 today. This significant price disparity highlights the economic exploitation the Cherokee endured during their forced migration. These instances reveal how financial and social barriers compounded the physical and emotional challenges of the Trail of Tears. Being compelled to navigate around unwelcoming towns and pay inflated fees further underscored the systemic inequalities faced by Native Americans during this period. Such obstacles not only delayed their progress, but also drained the limited resources available to sustain their communities on this arduous journey. It wasn't just an Indian migration. As the Cherokee embarked on the Trail of Tears, many brought enslaved African Americans with them. These individuals, already subjected to the harsh realities of enslavement, faced additional challenges as they endured the difficult conditions of the journey alongside their Cherokee masters. Their presence on the trail highlights the complex and often overlooked intersections of slavery and Native American history. The enslaved were expected to perform a wide range of demanding tasks to support the migrating groups. They hunted for food to supplement meager rations and prepared meals for the travelers. They also took on domestic responsibilities such as washing clothing and caring for those who had fallen ill during the journey. Beyond these duties, they played critical roles in ensuring the safety and success of the migration by guarding campsites and serving as scouts, helping to navigate unfamiliar and often treacherous terrain. This dynamic sheds light on the multifaceted social structure within Cherokee communities at the time. While many Cherokees were themselves victims of systemic oppression, some had adopted the institution of slavery, reflecting broader societal influences from the United States. The enslaved individuals' experiences on the Trail of Tears reveal not only the physical demands of the journey, but also the enduring human cost of entrenched inequalities within both Cherokee and American society. Understanding this aspect of the trail will help us gain a deeper understanding of the layers of hardship that shaped this tragic chapter in history. It was freezing cold. Captain John G. Burnett, a soldier who served as a translator during the Trail of Tears, reflected on his experiences later in life, recording his memories on his 80th birthday. He described the trail as one of the harshest directives ever carried out in American history. Among his recollections, he often emphasized the unforgiving weather conditions, which played a significant role in the suffering endured by the Cherokee people. In May 1838, the Cherokee were forcibly removed from their homes and confined to stockades in Cleveland, Tennessee. They remained there until October, when the march westward began. This timeline meant that much of their 1,000-mile journey took place during the winter months, exposing them to harsh and freezing conditions. Burnett vividly remembered how ill-prepared many were for such a journey. Some had only the thinnest blankets to shield themselves from the bitter cold, and many walked barefoot over icy ground as snow and sleet fell relentlessly. The prolonged exposure to the elements led to severe health challenges. Diseases such as pneumonia became rampant as the cold weakened the immune systems of those making the journey. The lack of proper clothing, shelter, and medical care exacerbated these conditions, resulting in numerous fatalities. Burnett's account highlights the physical and emotional toll exacted by the weather on the Trail of Tears. The Cherokee endured not only displacement, but also the cruelty of nature, which compounded their hardships. There weren't enough wagons to go around. Historical accounts of the Trail of Tears frequently highlight the insufficient number of wagons available to transport those being relocated. Like many other necessities on the journey, wagons were in short supply. As a result, only the most vulnerable individuals, infants, the elderly, the ill, and nursing mothers, were permitted to ride. This left the majority of the Cherokee to undertake the 1,000-mile trek on foot, often without adequate footwear. Walking such a great distance posed immense challenges, particularly for those who were already physically weakened. A traveler from Maine, who encountered one of the caravans in Kentucky, described witnessing elderly women, frail and seemingly near the end of their lives, trudging barefoot with heavy loads strapped to their backs. The scarcity of wagons reflects broader logistical failures during the forced migration. These shortcomings magnified the physical demands of the journey, forcing most individuals to rely solely on their endurance and determination to survive. The absence of proper transportation not only lengthened the journey, but also exposed travelers to additional risks, including injuries and illnesses brought on by the harsh terrain. This aspect of the Trail of Tears demonstrates the systemic neglect that characterized the removal process. Beyond the physical hardships, it underscores the broader disregard for the well-being of the Cherokee and other Native American groups. Despite these immense challenges, their perseverance remains a testament to their strength and humanity amid one of history's most tragic migrations. The trip took twice as long as expected. The majority of the Cherokee who were forcibly relocated to the west followed a path now known as the Northern Route. This route spanned approximately 1,000 miles, cutting through what are now Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas, before finally reaching the designated lands in Oklahoma. When the journey began, the Cherokee estimated that it would take around 2 months to complete. This assumption was based on ideal conditions, which unfortunately were far from the reality they encountered. Difficult terrain, inadequate provisions, and the spread of illnesses extended the journey significantly. In the end, it took nearly 4 months for the travelers to reach their destination. The Cherokee managed to cover an average of only 8 to 9 miles per day. This slow progress was largely a result of the numerous hardships they faced. Rough, unpaved paths tested their endurance, and limited access to nutritious food left many weakened. Compounding these challenges were widespread illnesses, which further delayed the caravans and placed an even greater strain on the already struggling travelers. This prolonged journey highlights the stark contrast between the expectations of the relocation process and the harsh realities faced by those on the trail. The extended timeline not only intensified physical exhaustion, but also deepened the psychological toll of displacement. For the Cherokee, every mile was a reminder of the magnitude of their forced migration and the resilience they summoned to endure such an arduous trek. It was treated as a spectator sport. Samuel Cloud, who was just 9 years old during the Trail of Tears, shared his experiences later in life, which were passed down through his great-grandson. His recollections are filled with sorrow, but the conclusion of his story stands out for its emotional depth and unsettling reflection. Cloud expressed a profound sense of resentment toward the white spectators who lined the roads, watching as the Cherokee and other Native Americans endured the painful journey. These observers, bundled in warm woolen clothing, remained distant and unmoved as the suffering continued before their eyes. If we take a moment to imagine the scene, it paints a heart-wrenching contrast. On one side, Native Americans, sick and dying, struggle to cover miles of desolate, freezing land. They are far from their ancestral homes, forced by the U.S. government to relocate to unfamiliar territory, not for their own benefit, but for the sake of survival. These people are enduring a tremendous personal loss, both of their land and of their dignity, as they are compelled to march into an uncertain future. On the other side, the white spectators remain silent. They do not offer assistance, nor do they express empathy. Instead, they observe from a distance, clad in the warmth and security of their own privileged circumstances. The stark juxtaposition between the suffering of the Native Americans and the indifference of those watching creates a painful image of isolation and helplessness. For Cloud, this scene encapsulated the cruelty of the Trail of Tears, an event marked not just by physical hardship, but by a profound emotional and social divide. This moment of reflection reveals much about the emotional toll of the relocation. It wasn't simply the physical journey that left scars, but the knowledge that they were being watched, judged, and ignored by those who held power over their fate. The deep resentment Cloud expressed reflects the lasting psychological effects of this trauma, which extended far beyond the physical journey itself, shaping the collective memory of the Cherokee and other Native American communities for generations to come. Death was everywhere. Historians estimate that approximately 4,000 Cherokee people lost their lives during the Trail of Tears. The causes of death were varied and devastating, reflecting the harshness of the journey. Many succumbed to the unforgiving elements, their bodies unable to withstand the freezing temperatures and severe weather conditions. Others perished due to malnutrition, as the meager rations provided were insufficient to sustain such a large group over the long trek. Illness also took a heavy toll, with diseases spreading rapidly among the weakened population. Additionally, the elderly, already vulnerable, were unable to endure the physical strain of the journey and succumbed to the brutal conditions. The burial process itself was as harsh as the journey. Due to the cold and often treacherous conditions, those who died were often buried hastily in shallow graves, with little more than a brief ceremony to honor their passing. The sheer number of deaths and the exhaustion of the survivors meant there was little time for mourning or proper funerary rites. The graves, often unmarked and forgotten, reflect the stark indifference of the journey's circumstances, where the lives of the deceased seem to fade quickly into the landscape. This tragic reality underscores the overwhelming human cost of the forced relocation. The death toll was not just a result of physical hardships, but also a consequence of the systemic disregard for the Cherokee people's well-being. The lack of adequate shelter, food, and medical care, combined with the relentless exposure to the elements, left little chance for survival. The lack of proper memorialization for those who died further illustrates the disregard for their humanity, as they were buried along the side of the trail, lost to history in ways that mirrored their forced erasure from the land they once called home. It meant all-out war for the Florida Seminoles. In Florida, the Seminole tribe made the bold decision to resist forced removal by waging war against the United States government. When U.S. forces arrived in the state in 1835 to enforce a treaty that required the Seminoles to leave their ancestral lands, they were met with unexpected resistance. A group of 180 Seminole warriors ambushed the U.S. Army, marking the beginning of a long and costly conflict. The U.S. government responded by committing vast resources to suppress the Seminole resistance. The cost of the war exceeded $20 million, a significant sum at the time. The conflict, which continued until 1842, resulted in the deaths of over 1,500 soldiers, reflecting the intensity and difficulty of the campaign. Despite the heavy losses on both sides, the war did lead to the relocation of many Seminoles to reservations in the West. However, not all was lost for the Seminoles. A number of them managed to avoid removal by retreating into the remote and inhospitable Florida Everglades. These determined survivors established hidden communities deep within the swampy wilderness, where they were able to evade capture and remain on their traditional lands. Their resilience is a testament to the tribe's determination to preserve their way of life in the face of overwhelming adversity. The Seminole War is often viewed as one of the most significant resistance movements among Native American tribes during the period of forced removals. It stands as a symbol of defiance against U.S. policies that sought to displace entire communities. While the war ended with the forced relocation of many, the Seminole people's ability to establish hidden communities in the Everglades ensured that their presence in Florida endured. This victory, though partial, serves as a powerful reminder of the tribe's resilience and their refusal to surrender their land and identity. The journey of the Cherokee people on the Trail of Tears was one of unimaginable suffering, where every step taken was a harsh reminder of the cruelty and injustices forced upon them. Yet amidst the brutality, the strength, resilience, and determination of the Native American people shine through, even in the darkest of times. The stories of survival, hardship, and endurance on this tragic trail are crucial for us to remember.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.